the throw, fire, and down! Incomplete down at the goal line by San Diego! Tomlinson, off the left side, Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. I think they have to now. Here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
What's up, good people? Welcome to Lightning Round Podcast. Craig is here. I am here. We did some traveling over the break, so we weren't there last week, but we are here the day after the Chargers fall to the Texans 2016. They are no longer in the hunt for the AFC West crown. That is now Denver's. They already clinched playoff spot, so right now it's where they all fall. But I think before we start to get into kind of how it all unfolded, I think we kind of start at the call that kind of hinged the end of that game, and that was the defensive pass interference from Tarheeb Still. Chargers seemingly get a stop, but then there's a call on Still, and the Texans are able to milk the clock and win the game. So in a time of the game where the Chargers have a chance to come back and win, where do you fall on this penalty? How do you think it kind of played out in the grand scheme of things? I mean, they lost, so it was pretty important. But what's your kind of take on that penalty? Because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about off the rip for sure.
I've been sitting with this for over 24 hours, and I'm still just as annoyed by it as I was when it happened. It should have been a no call. Let's start with the fact that I believe that was Jalen Noel. He initiates the contact with Tarheeb Still. So he's running his route. He gets to the top of it, extends his arms. What it looked like to me is Tarheeb Still, in an effort to keep his balance, grabs the outside of his pads, which you shouldn't do. Of course, I'm assuming that's what drew the flag. The fact of the matter is, if the receiver's running his route and you're standing your ground and you're not turning and getting in the phase to run, because what I think Still was anticipating was some sort of underneath route or a crossing route. So he was planning to jump it. And instead, what happens is you got Noel initiating the contact, Still holding on for dear life, and then the flag coming out. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what is this? OPI? Because I'm looking at what happened above that to Cam Hart, where he ends up on the ground.
Right.
From the receiver running through him. I'm like, oh, okay, so what is this? OPI? And then when they called illegal contact, I'm like, well, on who? And then I see the replay and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because if that's the call you're going to make in that situation, how do you ignore what happened right above it? If anything, that's the one you go for. But instead, that was one of those ticky-tack calls, and you literally decided the game. The outcome of the game was decided on that play. And I know that we don't like saying that about we try not to blame things on the refs. We get it. But there are those instances, especially in tight games, which you don't want to play. But I mean, let's be honest, majority of NFL games are like one-score games. But you're putting yourself in a situation where the refs can get themselves involved. And in that scenario, you let that play out because you've essentially taken the game away from a team with an opportunity to come back and win it. And even if the Chargers don't win it, they at least get a chance to go down the field with 2 minutes left. You completely dashed that and decided, okay, I'm going to step in here, make this call, which is an either or call. If it's something that's remotely like close to being an either or, you just swallow the flag on that. That was not an egregious play by Tarheeb Still whatsoever. What is what happened above them, and you just turned a blind eye to that. So yeah, I'm still really peeved about it because although there were, and we'll get to it, other things that took place in this game that caused the Chargers to walk out of SoFi losing by 4 points. Ironically enough, when you think about the 4 points that were missed by a certain player that you would never have expected. Yeah. There were other things that took place, of course, but in this scenario, in this situation, there's no way the refs should have thrown that flag, and they took it upon themselves to get involved and essentially decide the game instead of allowing it to happen on the field between the two teams. And I'm probably going to stew on this one for a bit, but that's why I stand. You just don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, they've already locked up a playoff spot. So, it would have been nice to be playing for that 1 seed going into next weekend. But and they didn't lose because of one call. Obviously, there was a comedy of errors that happened before that, which we will get into. But it really does feel like when you have a call like that at the end of the game, when Stroud is getting sacked, that call on the back end does not result, like, it did not hurt the play that was happening at the time. The play before that, and by the way, I was telling Craig before this, like, all season long, I've said a lot of things throughout the season on Twitter, and last night was the first night that a group of fans did not take kindly to any of my words. So the fact that Texans fans came after me and everything was funny, but because their big argument was that, right before that, the Texans had a penalty where, Ladd is running his route. Petrie kind of cuts in front of him, impedes Ladd's route, and Herbert can't get to Ladd. Ladd has to stop his feet, and kind of, the whole timing was off, and it was way past 5 yards. It was probably 15, 20 yards downfield. And then they call the penalty on the Texans where, Herbert's looking in that direction, and when a receiver has his route impeded by a DB, that's a penalty all day long. That's pass interference. That can't happen. But when a QB is sacked and on the very back end, the receiver, Noel, definitely initiates contact, which at first in the replay felt like he was like maybe making a block downfield almost. Like his arms were like extended out, like ready to go block Hart.
Looked like he was stalk blocking.
Yeah. But then even though he got that grip on the inside of his pads, it's not like Noel was impeded all that much in his route anyway. So it really felt like if you're going to make that call, it really has to be a penalty. And I know that, by rule, Texans fans are saying that's a penalty all day long, but that just, when you look at the gravity of that situation, when something is so like ticky-tack like that and Stroud's getting sacked, you got to swallow the whistle on that, especially because there's a chance for the Chargers to come back and win. You're not taking the game away from the other team. That's just not a penalty you should be calling. And I'm not all that heartbroken about it, but I mean, because the Chargers lost this game from a bunch of different angles, not just because of this penalty, but to basically end the game on a call like that just is not a good look, not for refs. And all day, the officiating crew and the head of officiating has gotten on shows all morning long talking about that penalty and how technically he got his hands on him. It was after 5 yards and all this other BS. But when a receiver initiates contact, you just have to let that go. And by the way, all game long, they were letting all that stuff go. Stingley was getting very physical downfield. Petrie was getting very physical downfield. I saw Cam Hart get physical downfield. Nobody getting called for any of those. But then this little kind of extent of the arm, getting a little bit of the pad thing, getting a penalty that late is just, it's a bad look. It's disappointing. I don't know if the Chargers even win that game anyway. That defense is pretty good, but at least as a reffing crew, like, you got to talk about that and be like that. I mean, that's not enough to, change the game and say that they need to call that and then Texans automatically win. It's just, in the grand scheme of things, you'd hope that the refs would be able to just kind of let those go, but yesterday they did not. And they were hearing about it all over, not just from Charger fans, but everybody, from the announcers because I tried to listen to Rich Eisen, but he's rough, man. I had to turn on the radio broadcast with Matt Money Smith, and they were talking about it. I switched over to Rich Eisen to see what they were talking about. They were talking about what a bad call that was, and then all throughout Twitter, national media is talking about how bad of a call that was. It was just, it's tough, man. Luckily, it was regular season. Chargers had already kind of clinched a spot, so it's, in the grand scheme of thing, it's okay. But it was, I mean, it's.
Can you imagine if that was a win and get in situation?
Yeah, that would have been hard. That would have been hard to take, but luckily it wasn't. And we've got stuff to talk about after that. But it's disappointing is what that call was.
What I'm curious about is that, and we understand how this works. The NFL is about the long ball. Chicks dig the long ball. It's all about offense. I don't understand how a rule can be created that only affects the defense negatively. So if it's 5 yards down beyond the line of scrimmage, right, and the wide receiver initiates the contact. Why is that okay? This is what I need understanding on. So we have to have these rules make sense across the board. That can't be something that can only negatively affect a defensive player. I very rarely have seen, like, you see offensive pass interference called all the time, but in scenarios like that, I don't think I've ever really seen it. But to call that net situation where it's so clear and obvious what happened, and for the stakes at that point in the game, it's inexcusable to me. Like, you're either going to call the game very tightly throughout, or you're just going to let the guys play ball. But you can't pick and choose when you're going to do that. There has to be some sort of flow to the game. Guys have an understanding of how the refs are going to call it so that they know how to play it. Like, you can't just adjust on the fly thinking, oh, okay, they might call this a little bit tighter now because it's, 2 minutes or so in the game. And like, all game long, you've been allowing this to go on, but now all of a sudden it becomes a point of emphasis. It's just like, again, it's questionable at best. I mean, I don't believe in the whole conspiracy theory thing with regard to the NFL for the most part, unless the Chiefs are involved. Yeah, man. Again, you're right. Chargers already in the playoffs, so it could be much, much worse. I just would have loved the opportunity to have a chance at winning the division, and it's even funnier now because this team could literally go undefeated in the division and not win it, which is wild to think about.
I know, and being 11-5 too. If finishing 12-5, sweeping the entire division and not getting the AFC West is a bad look. It's great. I mean, great for the season, but yeah, just not great.
No, man. Well, again, we got next week to look forward to. You still got a potential playoff run to look forward to. So, I guess no use crying over spilled milk at this point. It could definitely be worse, but still, that one stings.
Yeah. So I guess we can just, let's start at the beginning. So it all starts with the very first series where Dante Jackson gets beat deep by Higgins. It looked like Jackson was looking for some help over the top. Bolden was not there, and it was an easy 7. And then Chargers punt the ball. And then the very next drive, it's Noel. He beats Bolden deep for another TD, and it's 14-0, and things are not looking pretty. It offensively, things did not start off great, and I think we could probably talk about Greg Roman, but they dug themselves.
Oh, we will.
Yeah. They dug themselves in that 14-0 hole, and the fact that they were able to get back and get close to winning that game was a minor miracle, because the way that game started, it just felt like it was going to be one of those butt kickings like they had was that Indianapolis or Jacksonville?
Jacksonville. They got boat raced in
Yeah,
Jacksonville. It at least somewhat looked competitive towards the end against the Colts. Started
These
off
AFC West South teams, man. I don't know what it is about the division.
I don't know, man. It's scary to think about. So the thing about this game in general is this was not supposed to happen. Like, I don't think anybody on anybody's bingo card did they have the Texans getting out to a 14-0 lead on 2 bombs. That wasn't a concern. Number one, because that's what the Chargers do best on defense. They, keep a roof over the top of the defense. And secondly, the Texans have sucked on offense virtually all year. And you've seen the struggles that they've had, throwing the ball, specifically CJ Stroud. He's terrible against zone defense. He's a better passer against man-to-man. And essentially a lot of that has to do with defenders having their back to him and him being able to place balls and get it out with better timing before they get their heads around. But in zone, he's been horrible all season. So that wasn't what I was afraid of. But when that happened on back-to-back drives, I'm like, okay, this is going to, like you mentioned, be one of those Jacksonville type games where none of this makes sense at all, where the weakness of the team that you're playing against turns into their strength somehow suddenly that they're playing the Chargers. I will say that the 2 back-to-back plays were definitely coverage busts. Jackson, like you mentioned, was looking for help, and I think got caught peeking on the second one. He was supposed to be over the top and wasn't there either. So there was a lack of communication on the back end between the safeties and the corners, and that's how you get 2 guys streaking down the middle of the field, up the sideline, like in back-to-back drives. The problem is this was the game where that couldn't happen because of the opponent. Like, where you're thinking it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out battle, you have a team that you can't afford to get up on you by 2+ scores because they literally have the best defense in the NFL. So once that happened, I'm like, okay, cut the lights off. It's a wrap. And then I realized, you know what? I'm not super concerned about the defense. I think they'll get it together, which they did. I mean, they only allowed 6 points over the remaining 3 quarters. The problem is you gave up 14 in the first.
Yeah.
So therein creates your issue and having to overcome what seemed like insurmountable odds. But they made it a game. And I will say that ultimately defensively, and this is what I've been saying since all these injuries occurred to the offensive line, the defense can't have a bad day, because they're who this team has to lean on week in and week out to keep them in games until the offense kind of figures it out as they go along. It's just what we saw this week. The problem is that they just, aside from the special teams blunders, which we'll get to, they just gave up too many points too early, and having to dig your way out of that hole didn't seem realistic with that pass rush and your offensive line. But I'll give them credit for just kind of willing it, specifically a one Mr. Justin Herbert, who, again, I will say this, nobody can tell me anything about 10, period. Like, after that performance, if you feel like hating, then it just means you have an agenda and you're being willfully obtuse on purpose. That's your thing. Cool. Just don't talk to me about it. But in general, I feel like, early the defense sold it, but they did what they were supposed to do for the remainder of the game, and the offense just couldn't get enough to squeak it out or tie it to potentially get into an overtime situation. And you just had those things in the margins. The offense trying to scratch and claw, a couple calls not going your way, and that's when, yielding those two. Had it been one less touchdown, had you not busted just one less on one less play, pause if necessary, we're probably talking about maybe a different game. But again, at this point, it's in hindsight, and it was there. I feel like it was still there to be had. I think there was an opportunity for the Chargers to actually make that, to flip this on his head if they got that last possession under 2 minutes, because it seemed like they kind of sort of figured some stuff out. And as we get into talking about these players individually, there's one guy that I think may have been able to come up huge in that moment and maybe get that ball into the end zone for 6, where I know it was a struggle all day, but from what he was showing, seemed like he was kind of due for another big play.
Yeah. After the 2 back-to-back touchdowns on deep plays that they have not given up all season. I mean, it was rare that they would get beat over the top like that, and it happened in back-to-back plays, back-to-back drives, which was a really tough hole to dig themselves out of. But immediately right after, we get a Derwin James interception from a Deshaun Hand tipped ball. I think it was Deshaun Hand. And then we got an Elijah Molden interception after that too. I mean, this game was kind of sideways right after that. Like, it kind of kept going in weird directions. There was no consistency with this game at all. It felt drunk from the beginning. And but after that 14 points, the Texans were given 6 points by J.K. Scott. They were gifted short fields by terrible punts by J.K. Scott, and they were set up in field goal range before the defense hit the field. So even at giving up 20 points, it wasn't that the defense was all that bad. Now, granted, those first 2 drives were awful and probably the worst of their maybe season and back-to-back drives. I mean, that was terrible. We haven't seen that all year, and they got it in back-to-back drives. But then after that, they were very good in the run game. They did very good getting after CJ Stroud. He was pressured a lot. And then, because J.K. Scott, I don't know, shrinks when the games matter, because it did feel like a playoff game yesterday. Texans were trying to get in. The Chargers were trying to, fight for that 1 seed and the top of the AFC West and win the division. So they both had something to play for, but I don't know what happened to special teams. Those kickers were awful yesterday, and hopefully not a liability going forward. But J.K. Scott gave the Texans a short field twice, and they were able to kick a field goal. And Fairburn's been great this season. So those were easy. So giving up 20, you'd think the Chargers would have a chance to win that game, but with everything else that happened between Cameron Dicker and J.K. Scott and some problems on offense, they didn't have it. And so while that call at the end of the game was disappointing, because they kind of just they handed the game away with a ticky-tack call, the Chargers did this to themselves. This was all self-inflicted. It wasn't because the Texans, well, granted, the Texans defense is good. When you think about, taking those points off the field from a gimme field goal from Dicker, a missed extra point from Dicker, which would have, the game should have been tied at the end anyway. A Rondé Gadsden tipped ball that went into an interception, like all that stuff that just kind of, that I don't know. Ashayor gets the interception and they keep him out of the red zone or out of the end zone, but it just feels like it wasn't quite that the Texans were getting to the Chargers. It felt like Roman was putting this team behind the sticks really early in that game. The special teams let them down. And then it just felt like the playmakers around Justin Herbert kind of let them down at times. Granted, Gaston bounced back and got a touchdown pass, which was great. And the celebration from the sideline, all like rallying around him, was great because I know he felt terrible about that drop. You could see it on the telecast. They kept pointing to him, getting him on camera after that. But it was all self-inflicted. And I hope that they get this all out of the way and they're ready to go in the playoffs, because that team that played yesterday, while Herbert was Superman again, that defense was not the same it was at the very beginning. That special teams was not what it was all year. And I just hope they can turn it around, because when playoffs come, Dicker can't be missing any kicks. He hasn't done it all year, and somehow he did it yesterday.
I call yesterday the Cheddar Bob game. For those of y'all out there that never watched 8 Mile, you've done yourself a disservice. Go check that out. There's a character in the movie who shot himself in the leg. That's what happened yesterday. From everything that you talked about, Cameron Dicker went complete Nate Kaeding, which I was not expecting, especially in a home game. And I've been saying this since last year. J.K. Scott punts just fine until you need him to. It's the ultimate like front runner thing with him. I can't figure it out, but in those tight games, dudes butt puckers and those kicks get sprayed all over the yard. And you're talking about nets of like 25, 30, 35 yards in the worst situations. I'm not talking about net punting from like 30 for 35 yards from the 50, where you're trying to get the ball like inside the 15 or anything like that. Talking about like what you saw in negative territory, where you're getting a team that has already struggled or is struggling like throughout the season with moving the ball offensively in a short field, where they have a kicker who's been performing well throughout the year. So you're putting them in position to succeed. Rondé Gadsden, that was a rough game for the Rook. Yes, he came back and caught that wide open touchdown. Thank God, because I was concerned when I saw the rollout and I saw that he was wide open in the end zone. I'm like, kid, get out of your head. I don't care how you catch this ball. If you have to cradle it like a baby, do that. Just ensure that you bring it down in the end zone. And he had 2 huge drops. Like the one that carried off his hands into the end zone. Well, sorry. I'm not assuming that was going to be a touchdown. Okay. Worst case scenario, that's a catch that he's tackled at like 2-3 yard line. Maybe the Chargers get in, maybe they don't. Who knows? But you cannot drop that ball in that scenario. And what you absolutely can't do is tip it into where all the coverage is. And you deflated that entire stadium and killed all the momentum. Then you follow that up on what would have been a 3rd down conversion with another drop where Herbert is literally playing Superman again, dodging 2 sacks to make a tremendous throw, which should have been a routine catch for him. And he drops that one also. Get over it, kid. We're going to need you next week and through the playoffs also. But yeah, again, weird game to have a rough game. But this was the type of game where you could not afford to have special teams issues and self-inflicted mistakes, because you were already playing a tough defense. I felt like this was always going to be a race to 20 points. Whoever got there first was going to win the game. So when the Texans got there, I was just kind of like, all right, threw my hands up. Let's see what we can make happen potentially. But the Chargers weren't able to eke it out. But what you can't have in games like this, and like I said, is where you lose these games in the margins, and special teams and the turnover battle is typically where these games are won and lost. Now, while the Chargers won the turnover battle, special teams is what cost them ultimately. Again, you lose the game by 4 points. Cameron Dicker misses the extra point and a 3, which no one could have seen coming.
No.
And, we talk about how they have these conversations right before the kicker kicks the ball about their accomplishments, and like they put the kibosh on it. It worked. It worked this time around. But I think Dicker's going to be fine moving forward. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy's just been tremendous. So I don't want to look at this and just like, brush it with broad stroke this and just say, hey, moving forward, we need to be concerned. J.K. Scott, different story, because I told you for like a year and a half now, this is who he is.
Yeah,
I have way more faith in Cameron Dicker to kind of pull it together moving forward. But ultimately, man, offensively, we're going to get into the weeds about the specifics where Greg Roman is concerned, but just sticking to the players. What I alluded to earlier in a little bit of a tease about the player that I thought was going to potentially put the Chargers in position to win this game, lo and behold, is Quentin freaking Johnston.
Yeah.
Because he was the only receiver worth his salt yesterday. And that was one of my, I think I posted it on Twitter before the game. I wanted to see him kind of exercise those demons from last year's playoff game, a wild card game against the Texans, which I was at, where he was blanked. And this is off the back of that huge performance he had against the Raiders. Now, granted, it was the Raiders, but it was a career game. So I thought he was going to ride that momentum into this game. So I looked at last week and what he did against the Cowboys. I'm like, oh, okay, similar scenario. Of course, this is not a playoff game, but, the stakes are still high because you have an opportunity to win the division. So I wanted to see how he'd show up. And he was the only receiver that did, by all accounts. I mean, 5 receptions for 98 yards. And I think on that last drive, if they got the ball back within 2 minutes, he would have put them in position to win the game, if not caught a score that put them up. That's just how I feel, because he was playing with a lot of confidence. He didn't seem on any of those passes to be double catching anything. He didn't look overmatched. We're talking about arguably, top 2 or 3 secondary when we're talking about just corners in the entire NFL. And he looked right at home doing his thing all game long. Ladd McConkey on a milk carton until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I have no idea how that happens.
I know.
Keenan Allen, Slay drops a big third down. I mean, talking about third and Keenan. That's supposed to be his thing. He drops a big third down ball. Other than that, he was relegated to what I think Keenan only had 3 receptions.
No, he had 1.
No, sorry, 1. He had 3
Yeah.
targets. My bad. So 1 catch for 17 yards. I don't know what else Trey Harris has to do to become a bigger part of this offense. But what he does every week is a flash of a big play, and normally it's moving the chains. But for some reason, he cannot get more than he had 1 target yesterday.
Yeah.
And I get it. There's 1 ball to go around, but you ride the hot hand, man. And the running game, completely non-existent. But you also have to consider the fact that this is a Texans team that knows your game plan. They know what you want to try to do. Every team knows what the Chargers want to try to do. They know what they want their identity to be.
Yep.
The problem is that there's no change up in the offense. There's no change up pitch. And that leads me into the whole Greg Roman of it all. I'm not having any more back and forth on Twitter with anybody about Greg Roman. I'm not doing it anymore because for some strange reason, people seem to think that the offensive line being trash, which it is an excuse for poor game planning. Here's the problem. I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, Garrett. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm going to throw the ball back. I know everybody's probably screaming pass the ball at this point. I'm sorry. I'm going
That's
ISO real quick.
Yeah.
So
let's do Kobe's.
Cool.
This is Kobe's ISO. Go ahead.
my overall problem here is that it's not an excuse. It's a reason. Your offensive line is in shambles, but it has been all season long. But what your job is as an offensive coordinator is to game plan as much as you possibly can around the deficiencies. It doesn't mean it's always going to work perfectly, but you have to have a plan B. What you can't do is roll into every game with what your initial plan is, regardless of your personnel, and think that somehow it's just going to magically work. Guys are going to your center's suddenly not going to suck. The interior of your offensive line is going to be serviceable at best. Your tackles won't be complete liabilities. You're just hoping and wishing on a prayer that at some point it works out. I don't know if you got the big head because it worked in Dallas, but dude, you were playing Dallas. You were playing the Dallas Cowboys defense last week. Rolling into the number 1 defense in the NFL with a similar mindset about what you thought you were going to come out and do, complete insanity. I, for the life of me, do not understand why that game plan from the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 10 could not be utilized for the remainder of the year in some capacity, but I've not seen hardly any of it. The quick game, the RPOs, the screen passes, moving the pocket, it's not a thing for him. And it drives me nuts week in and week out. Blaming your offensive line for the shortcomings of the offense in totality is lazy. Yes, the offensive line is bad, but good offensive coordinators have to come up with it. You literally get paid millions of dollars to come up with game plans to try your best to circumvent that as much as possible. And I'm not here being unrealistic, thinking that, oh, he's just got to figure it out. Like, yeah, your offensive line's trash, but just make it work somehow. That's not what I'm saying. What you can't do is act as if they're not trash and coming with the same game plan as if you're walking out there with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater at your tackle position. You're just going to ground and pound teams, and then also ask your quarterback to continuously drop back 5-7 step drops over and over and over again, regardless as to what the defensive front is, but especially not when you're playing arguably the best pass rush in the entire NFL. It's pointless. It's inexcusable. And at this point, I'm just trying to understand what happens weekly. And it feels like Jim Harbaugh needs to put his foot down, because whatever's going on when they're having these game plan conversations, I'm not sure who has input. I'm not sure if Herbert needs to be maybe a little bit more assertive. But I'm sorry, dude, if you're dropping back and you're getting destroyed like this more often than not, it feels like impending doom every time there's a pass play. This should not be a problem. The pre-snap splits, the route combinations, basura. Complete trash every single week. Marcus Brady, I thought, also would have more of an influence on Greg Roman, but it doesn't appear to be the case. I'm going to back off of it now, because at some point I'm going to get disrespectful, and these guys are professionals. They get paid to do this job, so I'm sure they're trying to do it to the best of their ability. But the fact that they roll out the same crap every week and just expect it to somehow work drives me nuts. And it would be different if I didn't see them do it successfully in week 10. So there's really no excuse to me.
Yeah, the best offensive coordinators are those that can be flexible, and Greg Roman does not feel like he can be flexible. It feels like he wants to run the ball twice no matter what, and if they can spam the run long enough, it'll open up the pass game later. And it just feels like that was probably true maybe 10, 15 years ago. But also, you've had game plans that have worked in the past, and while running it twice in a row worked against certain defenses, and then making it third manageable, it doesn't happen every time. And so when you have a defensive front like Houston has, and you're doing the same type of thing, that just isn't going to work. And so in order for him to really be successful, he's going to have to be more flexible. And unfortunately, I hope that Greg Roman learns from all this and he opens it up when they hit the playoffs. But if we're looking at a playoff game right now, which, by the way, I think just an update. So Eagles won today, so Buffalo lost, which means the Chargers could get the 5 seed if they win against Denver and then the Texans lose. Because right now they are, 7th seed, I think. Is that right?
The Texans?
Or no, Chargers. Chargers are 6, excuse me. Bills are 7th right now. After today, they can jump up to 5th if they win the game. Which is now something we're going to have to talk about, because do you feel like with the 5th seed on the line that the Chargers should be playing for a win right now, or should the Chargers just be resting starters and just trying to figure it out? So they would, if they got the 5th seed, they'd play whoever wins the NFC North, which right now looks like it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Would you, if you're head coach, would you play starters, try to play for that 5 seed, or do you just let it roll, try not to get any injuries, and then just play who you got to play?
So it feels like playing the starters is tempting fate, just kind of based on Charger history. To me, I would want to play the Pats. So
We're the 2 seed right now.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Is that 5 or 6? So
they would need to be 7.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
So if you don't play starters, they lose in Denver. Then they're the 7 seed.
Yeah. Sure. Oh man, the thing with me is I guess I'm a traditionalist, so I'm always about play to win.
Yeah.
But you're playing Denver next week.
In Denver.
Mm-hmm. Hellacious pass rush again. So you're putting Herbert on the line. I hate to say this, man, but I guess getting the lower seed, like resting as many guys as you can to go into the playoffs as healthy as you possibly can get. What you can't afford are any more injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that because in my head it's the smart thing, but in my heart it's not what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I would love a matchup specifically playing the Pats because they've played the easiest schedule in the entire NFL for
Mm-hmm.
almost a whole year, which I still don't know how that happens, but it just worked out that way. I would rather the Pats in the first round, but
Well, they weren't any good last year. That's why.
well, yeah, now this
That's
is
terrible
true.
last year.
This is true. And again, you're playing essentially what amounts to kind of sort of like a last place schedule, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't. I'm not saying that I don't think the Pats are a decent team. I just don't believe they're as good as their record says they are.
Yeah.
So that would be my preference. But again, like I said before, for me, it's hard to say just go out there and whatever happens, happens and let like your backups get some burn because I mean you're in the playoffs. So what the hell? Like it's just about seeding at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to duck smoke from any team at this point. Like I'm cool with anyone. I would prefer the Pats. I think that would probably be the easiest path to the next round for the
Mm-hmm.
Chargers. But
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, long story less long. If they decided not to really play starters next week or pull them early, I wouldn't be mad about it.
Yeah, I don't want any starters playing this game. And that was after they lost. Herbert already, by the way, went down early in that game. Was kind of like having that broken hand.
First drive.
Yeah. So with a man who's wearing a cast, do not put him in harm's way. I don't care. I don't want Herbert playing this game at all. And I don't want many starters playing this game either. This is just a matchup just to see where you fall. And to be honest with you, it's going to be either the Pats, the Jaguars, or the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't really want to play the Jaguars again because of how things turned out, I am not worried about any of that. If somehow Trey Lance gets them to a win, that's great, but I don't want any stars playing this game at all.
No, I mean, again, like I said, I wouldn't be mad at it. It's the purist in me that's talking about, playing the guys and play to win, like playing to win regardless. But the smart thing is going
I'll
to be,
tell you something. I think Harbaugh is the purest of purists. So I think he is absolutely playing everybody.
And the longer as we go throughout the week, I'm probably going to hope that he doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately I'm right there with you. It's just, it's battling between my head and my heart. Oh, rewind. I know we went through this whole song and dance already, but there was something that stuck out to me that I didn't mention about the offense that I think really, if anyone caught it, should probably piss you off. So further proof that it's in there as far as the play calling is concerned. The most creative play from yesterday's game I can recall was in the first quarter. If you guys remember, it was on like a third and manageable. The offense aligned in like basically an empty set initially. And then they shift into a gun bunch. So Hampton moves into the backfield. Trey Harris moves from out wide to basically like an H-back position. At the snap, he crosses the formation behind the line of scrimmage. Herbert runs a quick RPO and then dumps the ball off to Harris. And then he picks up like in space and he picks up the first down with his legs. And then I'm thinking to myself, you did that in the first quarter to convert a third down in negative territory, but you got into the red zone multiple times and there was none of this.
Yeah.
So again, my point is that it's there. And when you see it, it makes you wonder, why are you not doing more of this? Or why are you using that here as opposed to when you're in scoring position? So if you're pulling this out of your bag of tricks, because I know it was rough moving the ball early, so you had to do what you had to do, but is that your only play like this, like any window dressing, any eye candy? You didn't have any of that in the red zone? Unbelievable. But let's continue. I'm sorry.
I know.
Let's
we
move
thought
on.
they were ramping up the Trey, and they were talking about how great he's been, and they've been putting more on his plate, and then it just feels like it's kind of fallen off recently. And C-Buns mentioned something in the chat. So if it is true that if the Chargers do beat the Broncos and the Patriots won, they would get the 1 seed. Broncos would get the 2, and there's a chance you could play them again. So it's not just, and I said it's going to be Pats, Jaguars, or Ravens, but there's a scenario where it could be Denver too. I don't know that you want that, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. It's gonna be an interesting last week of the season, to say the least.
Yeah. I do want to say also, we kind of got off the game a little bit, but Bobby Hart was an awesome right tackle for a long time, at least a couple games this season. But I don't know what happened to him yesterday at left tackle, but he did not look like he should be playing left tackle. And I'm glad the team benched him because Austin Deculus actually played pretty well when he came in. I was very surprised. So much better than Hart did. I don't know what happened, but to get beat as bad as he did against Danielle Hunter on that first drive, there's just that doesn't look like a veteran tackle ever. But again, he hasn't played left tackle in, I think they said like 2 or 3 years in Cincinnati. So it's been a while, but he was rough yesterday.
I'm with you. The fact that they knew to pull a parachute like soon, because that was the first third. I think it was the first drive, right? First offensive drive.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
When you get beat by just a basic hesitation step that badly, it's probably going to be a long day for you.
Yeah.
Danielle Hunter is a freak. Okay. Totally understand that. That wasn't like him going in his bag of tricks to make something happen. He literally just pulled the slightest of hesitation moves, and Hart was almost on the sideline, like trying to recover. Like he moved so far to his left. It made me wonder, like, is
his controller broken?
Yeah, like exactly. It looked like the controller died. He's just kind of glitching off to the left. And so, kudos to them. Like, but again, you're thinking, oh, wow, they're putting in Deculus. Oh, it's got to be bad because, I mean, there's a reason why you got Hart over there and starting him, not Deculus.
Right.
But I will give Deculus props. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, between Will Anderson and Hunter, they only had like a sack and a half. Now, granted, I mean, the Texans still wound up with 5 on the day. So as a whole, it still wasn't great. But Deculus coming in and holding his own basically shows you a couple things. I mean, they made the move to acquire him, but they saw something in him that they felt like they could develop, and it looks like it's growing. I'm not saying to the point to where he needs to be a starting tackle. Yeah. But I mean, if he's the best option that you have right now for the time being, then you just got to roll with what works. But yeah, that was rough, man. And yeah, there's a reason why Hart was playing right tackle, and he was good for the time that he was. And I mean, we're still talking about a dude who hadn't played real snaps in 2-3 plus years. Yeah. So we should be happy that we got what we got out of him. And this musical chairs game that we're playing on offensive line, it just continues. So whatever the best option is for that week is what we got to roll with. If somebody's sucking, then you pull them and get somebody else in there and see how they fare. Because really at this point, there's no telling who it is from week to week who's going to step up and who's going to be complete trash. So you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and hopefully Salyer's back pretty soon, and we don't have to have that conversation. But and Pipkins wasn't great yesterday either. But hopefully Salyer's back, and he's been really good at left tackle. So I'm hoping come playoff time that is the case. So if you guys got any questions, feel free to send them in. I think we're like starting to wrap up here a little bit. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we start to get in these questions?
Actually, one other thing.
Okay.
So interestingly enough, no disrespect to this person because I appreciate what they do.
Uh-oh.
He's probably never going to see this. Okay. Matt Money Smith. Okay.
Oh, I thought this was Popper. Okay, go ahead.
No. Come on.
Okay.
We know what the deal is. We don't have to do that. Again, like I said, I appreciate all the work he does, but I definitely rolled my eyes last week when he was trying to imply that because the number of sacks and pressures between the Chargers and Texans have been like comparable over the last month, that it essentially like put them on similar tiers. I mean, I get that he was basically like hyping the defense, but fam, look, there are very clear and distinct differences between the combo of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. And as good as they've been, the trio of 34-year-old Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Odafe Owe, respectfully. The Chargers were not consistently getting home with 4. And this was against a beaten and battered Texans offensive line. But the Texans sure as hell were. So again, let's not conflate things just because in this instance, numbers did lie. we expected this defense to get home a heck of a lot more. Like later in the game as it progressed, they were blitzing more, but that's why they were getting home. They weren't just primarily getting home with 4. They were having to mix things up against CJ Stroud and really get after him, because you can see that under pressure, especially against the blitz, he goes into a complete shell and dude is just lofting up ducks. But I'm saying all this to say that if you're not going to keep it real, at least keep it realistic. Y'all know that's my saying, right?
Mhm.
So, Matt, I get what you were doing, man, but when you were saying that these teams weren't that far apart defensively, like when we're talking about caliber of player and level of production, you saw the difference there on Sunday. The Chargers did what they had to do for 3 quarters, but they had to be a little bit more strategic about it. Whereas that Texans defense can line up any way they want, even in man-to-man, for what they have out on the corners, and especially for what they have on the edges, and they can get after you with just 4. So, like, all the hyperbole, like, it can get out of hand at times. And for sure, last week I was just kind of looking like, dog, come on, what are we really doing here? But again, I salute him for what he does and everything that he is to the Chargers, but sometimes he can go a bit far.
For sure. It feels like anybody on that network goes a little far.
Uh,
Your like calculated kind of even takes go out the window, and you got to just go hyperbole and hype everything up. So this is a question that was going out throughout the day today in the chat. So Journeyman 47, biggest problem is center. That's what Becton had on the Eagles, I think is what he's saying. Honestly, if they can find a quality center, free agent, or draft one and replace Becton, I think they sign Johnson. So the chat is like, what are they going to do this offseason? Are they just going to roll with a whole new interior offensive line? What do you think's going to happen? But it feels like if they had a true center with a beating heart, they would be a much better team. It is so apparent how bad Bradley Bozeman makes everybody around him that Becton's obviously been disappointing, and I feel like all 3 guys need to be replaced, and I don't give a care about any of that
family
other
show.
thank you. I know there's kids watching about any of the, they need continuity and all that other stuff. Zion can kick rocks. Bozeman should buy his own plane ticket home, and Becton at least needs some kind of competition. So they've got a ton of money, and if you're not helping out your quarterback, and again, they re-signed Slater, they drafted Joe Walt, like they were trying to get Herbert some help on that offensive line, but the biggest problem, which we had talked about all offseason, is that they do not have a good enough interior offensive line. Becton helped at the time, felt like he was a little bit of an improvement on the interior, but at least probably better than last year, what they had in interior with Trey Pipkins, who was just an awful right guard. But I don't know. They got some kind of competition for who's the worst between Becton and Pipkins at this point. But to re-sign Bradley Bozeman was a mistake this offseason, and it's starting to kind of pay off for the Chargers in a bad way so far. But honestly, they have got to replace all 3. And I don't want to see Zion. I don't care what kind of year he's having. It is just smoke and mirrors. He is not good, and he should not be on this team next year. Bradley Bozeman should not be here, and Becton can be here, but he's going to need some competition, in my mind.
Man, they re-signed Becton. Well, I'm sorry, not Becton, Bozeman.
Bozeman.
I thought they were re-signing Bozeman for the vibes, man.
Yeah.
He was one of those locker room dudes who went after somebody when they, went at Herbert too hard. Like, that's what I thought. I thought at best he was going to be a backup. But then you saw the contract, and you realized they're thinking about running this back with him. And for what reason? It never made any sense to me. And essentially, again, you're talking about a team that thought they were going to have the largest right side of the offensive line in all of the NFL, and they were just going to be able to grind on people.
Mm-hmm.
Even still, what made you think that putting Mekhi Becton to Bradley Bozeman's right was going to result in anything positive? Mekhi Becton is, no disrespect, a failed first-round offensive tackle that was moved to guard as a project, as a last-ditch effort to keep the guy's career going. And he found success with the Eagles for a year and won a ring because he was in between 2 Pro Bowl players and playing for the best offensive line coach in all the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, that's going to cause you to maybe step your game up a bit, but also they can hide you all as well. That's not an option with Bradley Bozeman to the left of you. And then when Joe Alt had to move, everything went out of the window because Trey Pipkins is, well, Trey Pipkins. We know what that, movie's like. We've seen that 1,000,001 times. If we're talking about the interior of this offensive line, I'm almost certain they're going to bring Zion back at this point. And it's because he's been decent. The bar is super low. Now I get it. You can't expect all of your offensive linemen to be all pro players. And Zion has made some improvement. I will give him that. But also playing next to Bradley Bozeman, and you got that other waste of space at 6'7", 350 pounds, playing opposite of him at right guard, then it makes you look a lot better. So if you're telling me they can bring Zion back at a reasonable cost, which I think that's what they're going to attempt to do, they're probably going to re-sign him. There's no way in hell you bring back Bradley Bozeman back to this team. I don't even care if you have him as a backup. I don't want him on the team. Like it offers you nothing positively on the field. Let him be a coach. Like, I'm not sure what his next stop is. I don't even know how old Bradley Bozeman is at this point, but I'm sure he's got more career behind him than he has in front of him. It make him, I don't know, like a cheerleader. Hell, I don't know. He can come in every day and give guys pep talks. If that's what he does, best, cool. But we do know that what he produces on the field is complete. It's a net negative to you overall offensively. So I do expect them to move on from Bradley Bozeman and at least have him not be a starter next year. I think he is under contract for one more year, if I'm not mistaken. But relegate him to backup duties, get a legitimate center. And if you want to, I haven't seen who's going to be available in free agency at the right guard position next year, but I think you should just go out and draft the best right guard you can get your hands on. So, I mean, if you got to go attack both positions in the draft at center and right guard and you just move on with the youth movement, cool. But I would rather them go one for one, get one high level player in free agency at either position and then draft another one high. And I think you might as well. I know you don't want to hear it, Garrett. I think you might as well just prepare for a new contract for Zion because I believe.
Yeah, I think they're gonna. Yeah, I think they're gonna bring him back no matter what. I don't want them to, but I feel like they're gonna do that and just say continuity and hey, back-to-back 11 wins and all that other stuff. I don't care, but it feels like the biggest connection right now is Tyler Lindenbaum, the Ravens center, who's had Pro Bowl caliber. He's young. He was part of the he drafted him, and now I've lost the Chargers GM's name in my mind already. Ortiz drafted him. I'm not sure the Ravens let him go, but a guy who they've obviously talked about would make an easy connection. The guard class for this free agent class isn't great, but when you have your floor in the dirt, I think you can find somebody better than what they have. So it really does feel like you can find some kind of guard center in free agency, draft a guard and be okay. Finding a center guard in the free agency and then draft the other one that you don't have. That feels pretty easy with all the money you have. It feels like it's the way to go. We talked about investing in interior defensive line. That'll happen too, hopefully. But yeah, that offensive line's got to improve next year. They got to protect Herbert.
When you're talking about offensive line improvement, by the way, there's someone whose name should not go without mention because I'm not sure why this man continues to get a pass. But what does Mike Devlin actually do? Because I'm not seeing any development on the offensive line really whatsoever. Like the Austin Deculus thing, gave credit for that. So cool for a game. So let's see how it goes next week, potentially. But that's still not a guy that you're going to be looking at to start long term. When we're talking about guys that aren't first round players, your Rashawn Slaters, your Joe Alts, who is he improving? Who is he helping to improve? I've not seen development aside from Zion not being a complete and total waste, but also keep in mind a former first rounder. That from these other guys that were like third, fourth round picks below, like, technically bust. I'm not seeing the real improvement from any of them. So I think Mike Devlin needs to go also. I've also been screaming that as well. there's an opportunity to not just improve your players, but you have to improve your staff. And I'm not sure what Mike Devlin has done to this point to retain his position. I'm not somebody who should, cheers on people getting fired and losing their jobs, but I also understand that this is a production-based business. And if you're not getting any growth from, guys who aren't just ready to tear out a wrapper and throw onto the field to be high-level performers, then something's not right. And when we're seeing on the other side of the ball, guys in the secondary literally being plucked from free agency or the 5th round and being high-level contributors year one, then it kind of tells on other people a little bit where you can find that level of production and growth in those players, but you flip it to the other side of the ball in the trenches where, by the way, Harbaugh's supposed to value his players the most. You're not seeing that level of improvement from the coaching staff and one guy in particular who's responsible for that entire front.
All right, Michael Flores, 7657 is Tierra Tarta free agent this year. Yes. Back to Journeyman. I trust them. Have you all ever considered that there wasn't any OL talent out there they felt deserved the money they were requiring or would actually move the needle on the field? I can give you a prime example if you'd like. Just look at the Chicago Bears. There is a center we had talked about. His name is Drew Dahlman, who is a free agent from the Falcons. He was top our free agent list of guys they needed to get. Jonah Jackson was another guard player we thought.
Well, wait, Garrett.
Sorry.
I was told Dahlman isn't a scheme fit. So
Right. So for those people who said they weren't a scheme fit, go look at how good the Bears are right now. And they traded for Joe Thuney. So you can do it. And the Bears are now, they're playing out of their mind right now. And I know Ben Johnson has something to do with it, but they signed 3 new offensive linemen in one off season, and somehow their team became significantly better. So I understand that you think that maybe, they didn't feel like there was any offensive line talent out there, but there are some names that we had mentioned early in this process last offseason. And we're going to go into this coming offseason and have the same exact conversation we did a year ago. It's going to be deja vu again, and we'll tell you who we think would make this offensive line better.
So when you were mentioning the Bears, right, and Ben Johnson, so they run a lot of outside zone. And technically, when you're talking about the Chargers, and this is to whoever's going to continue to make the Dahlman argument, and them wanting to be more of a power gap team, right? Go look at how much outside zone the Chargers are currently running. And also, by the way, the level of success they've had with it throughout the season. The running game in general has been hit or miss, but they've been pretty decent on outside zone runs, especially since Hampton's been back. So I think Drew Dahlman would have worked just fine one way or the other. Just me personally, but I also think like all pro players, you can kind of figure it out with them. And you got the athleticism. It looks like, from what I've seen, because I've seen some of the Bears run a little bit of power here and there, he never looks overmatched to me. So again, that's just my personal opinion. I've only been watching, playing, coaching, training football for over 30 years. So what the hell do I know?
All right. I think at that point, I think we're good here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, join the Discord, and do all that other stuff. We appreciate you guys joining us the day after the Chargers lose, but they're in the playoffs, and hopefully very, very soon we'll be able to do a playoff matchup, which will be a lot of fun podcast to have. So we will see you next time. Everybody have a good new year. We will see you in 2026.
26.
And we will see you next time.
Salute.